Dreading going to work tomorrow? At least you haven't been dead for months. We gotta be talking about Buffy Season 6. Hey there, welcome to another edition of the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host Mike, bringing you another Tuesday Terror edition as we go through the Buffy the Vampire series, and tonight we'll be talking about Buffy the Vampire Season 6. Now, this might be the most controversial season in the whole series because it is dark, and you have to kind of know a little bit about what was going on in the Buffyverse as a whole. At this time, Joss Whedon was also making the show Angel. There's been a lot of reports since the series has concluded that, you know, he was fighting with castmates on both shows, particularly Miss Carpenter, who played Cordelia Chase in Buffy, and then later on in Angel. Both shows around this time got really, really dark, and I could argue that Angel got a little bit darker, though that's debatable. It's definitely a different kind of dark, but this season is very dark, and it kind of has to be because where we left off at the end of season 5, Buffy gave her life to save the world. But before we go any further, please know there will be spoilers in this review for season 6. Again, Buffy is a very in-depth show. It's got a lot of deep themes, and you know, I can't really talk about them without spoiling some of the series event. Now, picking up where season 5 left off, Buffy has given her life. It's been a few months, and Willow is devising this plan to resurrect Buffy. And Giles does not know, Spike does not know as well, who would be very angry about that. And pretty much after Giles goes back to England, which was by chance, they resurrect Buffy through this spell. And they think that they're saving her from this horrible hell dimension that they think that she went to at the end of season 5, given she closed the portals to hell. But she comes back, she's completely freaked out, she doesn't know what's going on, and once her senses kind of calm down and they explain what happened, you know, she settles in, but she actually discloses to Spike she was actually in heaven, and she was not in hell, and she was in a place of perfect peace, and the first time she'd been at peace really since she became a Slayer. And as the season goes on, it's not really this cohesive plot point. They play with, you know, Willow is becoming addicted to magic, and her and Tara's relationship really suffer, and they take a break because of that. And they're kind of leading to she's gonna go off the deep end and become this evil witch. And Buffy starts using Spike actually because, you know, she's lonely and she's all messed up that she came back from the dead, and he's kind of dark and she's mistreating herself, and they have a really toxic relationship in this. You know, Dawn's struggling to readjust to Buffy being back. Xander and Anya are really struggling in their relationship. And so in summing up all the negative things that happen, I'm actually going to refer to a list because it's so long and depressing. So you have Buffy dealing with PTSD, coming back from heaven, and was pulled out of heaven. You know, Spike's tormented sort of after the end of last season and failing Buffy, but now he's also tormented because he wants to be with Buffy romantically, but they have a toxic relationship. Willow becomes an alcoholic magic freak, and her and Tara break up. Xander leaves Anya, and also Spike sexually assaults Buffy towards the end of the season. And also Tara is shot by some normal human that has a vendetta against Buffy. So yeah, this is a very dark and kind of negative season as a whole. It also kind of suffers again that it doesn't have this real cohesive villain, this big bad. Like all the other seasons, they're kind of building up to one. And this one, it ends up being Willow because after Tara dies, she just goes batshit insane and wants to destroy the world to kind of take away pain. But you have the trio for most of the season, and they're just a bunch of geeks. You know, it's Jonathan, Warren, and Andrew, who have all kind of been in the show in the past. Jonathan, you know, he did the spell in season 4 to take over the town, and he also almost killed himself in season 3. But you know, he was one of the high school dorks. Warren was the guy that couldn't get and built a robot girlfriend, and eventually built the robot Buffy. And then Andrew, his brother, tried to ruin the prom with the Hellhounds in season 3, but he apparently made some kind of like flying spider monkey demons terrorize a show. So those are the 3 guys kind of being the main villains, but they're just a bunch of goofy oddballs. They live in the parents' basement of one of their houses, and they're just doing all these stupid schemes. But along the way, Warren becomes kind of insane, and he actually decides he wants to kill Buffy. And after one of their plots goes wrong, he decides to actually go to Buffy's house and shoot her. And so he pulls out a gun, shoots a bunch of times, and Xander's in the yard with her, and they're outside, and he actually hits Buffy and hurts her, but one of the bullets flies through the window and kills Tara. And that's how you end up with this whole mess of a situation. And in the last couple episodes where Willow's going crazy, it's actually Xander who saves the day by bringing love back to her to get her to stop doing all her evil magic and trying to destroy the world. But, you know, that's the season in a nutshell. There's not a ton of fun episodes in it. There's some fun scenes here and there, but it's completely a serious tone. And because of that, you know, there's a lot of fans out there that do not like this season. You could see this season ranked dead last. There's other fans who actually would rank this top of their list, and it really just depends how you view it. It is a really interesting season, and after the masterfully done season 5, this one does feel like a letdown. I just don't think it is quite the same level of energy, fun, but also I don't think a lot of things were executed well in it. Now there's 4 kind of main themes I want to focus on when looking at this season, and I'm gonna start with Willow and Tara. Now Willow goes crazy after Tara dies, and you know, the whole season there's all this stuff where she's becoming addicted to magic, and Tara just actually leaves her for a little bit because Willow actually casts a spell on her to make her forget a fight that they were having, and that's how powerful Willow has become. But as they're healing and mending things, and Willow actually made improvements with her magic, you know, she tragically dies, and Willow just feels like she's lost everything and doesn't want to feel pain anymore and decides to destroy the world. And Willow does, before she's done, actually kill Warren, who is the one that shot Tara, and she kills him in a very vicious way, rips off all his skin. And this is something that's been building for several seasons. And again, I think Willow has been addicted to magic really since, I would argue, like season 2, you could say. But when her and Tara got together, there was that clear attraction to Tara because she had so much magic. And I think there was other attractions there too. I'm not dismissing any of the points people will raise about the importance of their relationship. This is a multi-season in the making, and it did feel a little rushed to me, the way they told it in this season. And I think it's because they started in the beginning with this as an issue, and then there's this big gap where nothing happens, and then the final couple episodes, you know, she goes crazy. So, you know, that's one of my biggest gripes with this season, is I just don't like the way it all came together. But I do think it's great the way Willow comes back through Xander, who's her childhood best friend, and he just won't back down to her and keeps telling her, "I love you, Willow, I love you." And that's how he's able to get her to snap out of her evil vengeance self and come back to reality. And I know Xander is kind of the butt of a lot of jokes, but if there's any moment in the whole series where he was necessary, it's this one right here, because Willow would have destroyed the world if it was not for Xander. Buffy's not the hero in this one. And then you have the whole Buffy has PTSD, and I'll get into her resurrection a little bit, but you know, Buffy this is her worst version of herself in this season, and she's just not right after coming back from heaven. She's sleeping with Spike, she's totally using Spike, she's letting Spike beat her up, Spike's letting her beat him up, you know, and it's this horrible toxic relationship, and she keeps it a secret for most of the season, but she just cannot come to grips with being back, and it's just hard to watch. And then you feel for her too, because there's one episode where Riley actually comes back, and he's actually happily married to this like G.I. Joe kind of tough girl. And, you know, I think that really hurts her when that's going on. But as she's going through all this, she's also learning to be a mom to her sister. She has to work because she's going broke. Her finances weren't well put together after she died. You know, so it's just very dark, and that does tie into Spike. Now, I know a lot of people like to believe Spike is Buffy's true love, and I completely disagree with that. You know, the sexual assault scene is tough. I've only watched it twice in my life, and I rewatched it again for this review. I don't know how you could ever equate the two of them being a healthy, happy relationship at any point, and that whole sexual assault was just really rough. I do agree there's some endearing things about Spike. There are times he's trying to be good in this season, and he doesn't have a soul at this point, which makes him incapable of choosing good decisions consistently. And he actually goes through this whole process after the sexual assault where he wants to be able to give Buffy what she deserves. And he goes to this demon and goes through all these trials and horrible tasks. I think they last a couple of days, just the way it's filmed. That's kind of what it alludes to. And literally gets the crap kicked out of him in order to get his soul back for Buffy. And I will say that's a beautiful scene. And it's really cool that, you know, he cared enough about her to do that. But at the same time, you know, I don't think he'd be doing this if it wasn't for a chip in his head. And I think it's different than Angel, because Angel had had his soul back for a very long time and had already become a person post losing his soul. And he also had kind of atoned for all his sins and processed them, and he was able to be a functional person. Spike started to fall in love with Buffy while he didn't have a soul, and everything is self-motivated. You know, he's completely driven by her beauty and her physical use, but it's not because he seeks any kind of emotional stability from her. And, you know, I just can't ever get into that they're really good for each other, even post-soul. And with that said, though, I do think Spike's a good example of someone to continue to fight through their issues. And it's amazing that he still went to go get his soul. Though I think it is a little muddy as to if that was his intention, because he went there saying to give the Slayer what he deserved, which could have meant a couple different things. He could have gone there for the power to kill her, like he was angry at her. Again, him ending up with a soul does show you that there was some kind of like hope and goodness that came from their very toxic relationship. And in that, you know, I do think you can find some good. And then the last thing I want to focus on is Buffy's death and resurrection. Now, this is a clear nod to Jesus Christ. And this happens in a lot of superhero movies and shows, but, you know, there's something about the story with Jesus Christ where, you know, he sacrificed and died for everybody. And then he came back from the dead to continue to help people and save people from their sins. You know, Buffy kind of has that, but in a different light. She willingly sacrificed herself for the good of the world and to save others, but she was pulled out of heaven, out of other people's selfish desires, because she didn't need people at that point. She was completely happy and content and at peace. It was all the people she left behind that needed her still, and they pulled her out of a place where she was happy out of selfish needs, which is kind of interesting. And it's definitely a metaphor for even in real life when we lose people we love. Like, I just lost my grandmother recently. I was crying because I'm gonna miss her and I'm gonna miss our talks, but I know from our conversations she's wanted to be dead for 30 years because she lost her husband a long time ago, and she loved my grandfather and she wanted to be back with him. And my tears are really for me, not her, because she's where she wants to be. I miss her in the present. And I really think that's how Buffy's friends and family felt. And I know they said they thought she was in this hell dimension, but you know, it's a little muddy how much they really believed that. And this was mostly driven by Willow, who I think really wanted to push her magical abilities and prove that she could bring someone back from the dead, which is totally not a good thing to do in the Buffy universe. But it also does show you just how incredibly important Buffy has been through this series and how selfless she's been through the series, to where people needed her so bad they were willing to cross lines that even in this fictional reality, people don't believe you should cross about bringing someone back from the dead. But I am glad she came back, because there's still some really cool things that happen in both season 6 and 7 that I think are really important to the Buffy universe and the story. I'm glad we get a little more time with her. All right, gonna do my rankings here, and I gotta give this one a 3 out of 5. You know, I do think it's quality TV. I think it's quality storytelling as a whole. I just think the season suffers from, one, the darkness, 2, the trio is just such a lame group of villains compared to the last 5 we've had in this show. Dark Willow is interesting, but the show still suffers from her not looming as this big bad until the very end. And Buffy works better when you know there's a crisis for most of the season and they're trying to figure out how to overcome it. And the season also suffers because it's almost all filler episodes for the most part, and a lot of them aren't that great. There are some groundbreaking episodes, like the musical episode, as much as I think it's kind of weird. Some fans absolutely love it, but I appreciate it for what it is. And I've actually heard some of the actors talk about how they all thought their acting careers would be over after that, because none of them could like sing and dance, and you know, they thought Joss Whedon was crazy for doing that. But you know, I gotta give credit on that. But there aren't a lot of really great episodes. It's more of there's some great scenes and some very flawed episodes in this season. And my overall ranking on the fun meter is actually only a 2 out of 5. This is the least fun. This is the hardest one to watch. Giles is not in most of the season, which drives me nuts because I feel like you need him as the dad figure in this show. And that'll be a theme that kind of carries into the next season a little bit, though we'll get a lot of Giles. You know, him being absent really takes away some of the formula that makes Buffy special. Thanks again for tuning in. Please subscribe and like. As always, I appreciate your support, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of Buffy season 6 or some of the themes I talked about here. And let me know if there's something that I didn't talk about that you think is particularly special about this season. And with that said, all I know is I'm glad that I have not been dead for several months and have to pick up the pieces. Work doesn't sound so bad tomorrow.